Supervisor, it looks like we have everyone in and connected. I might let in a few more folks as they join in, but anytime you'd like to get started.
Very good. Yeah. Very quickly pull up the participants list so I can see who's here, and then we'll get going. Okay, there it is. Okay. Well, I want to say good evening to friends and neighbors in Strawberry Mill Valley. I am delighted to be able to join you, still online by Zoom, but in person one of these days soon, I hope. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for me to give a quick update on local issues in the Strawberry community, and then move to a presentation by our Environmental Planning Manager, Rachel Reid, who will talk about the scoping session that will take place 1 week from tonight for the Seminary project, and then the EIR process itself and what you can expect during that process. For some of you, this is not your first rodeo with EIRs and development, but for others, it is a first time. And so I wanted to do a briefing up front on the process for those who are new to it. So this is not a night for comments on the substance of the EIR or the scoping session itself. In other words, what concerns you may have about the project. It is, however, a great time to ask questions tonight about what this process looks like, or what the timeframes are, and any of those kinds of how it all works kinds of questions. So with that, I'm going to just jump into a very brief overview and of just local issues. And first, I want to congratulate us all. Marin County, 87.5% of our population 16 years old and above have received one vaccination for COVID, and 71% have completed the 2 sets of vaccinations. So that is 71% of our population, and it does extend to our minority populations as well. And I'm very proud that the county not only prioritized seniors and those in care facilities first, and then move throughout the age ranks, but also prioritize the minority communities where outreach has been necessary to these communities to get everybody included at the same rates. And we've done that. So there's a lot to be proud of. I know we're all still very tentative going back out in the world. I certainly am, and the new normal will be the rule of the day. So anyway, on a couple of quick notes, traffic and infrastructure are one of the things I follow most closely because I think this impacts our quality of life quite a lot. So let me just share a few updates on streets and road projects. The Board of Supervisors voted 2 weeks ago to permanently reduce the speed on Seminary Drive by the school from Ricardo to Gilbert to 25 miles an hour permanently. So not just when kids are in school, but all the time. And this is because of the usage in the area, not only school kids, but walkers and dog walkers and kids on bikes. And something that schools around Marin County have done in Mill Valley, just reducing speeds where we have the ability to do that. I always think that's a good thing. Some of you may know that Caltrans has a project to repave Tiburon Boulevard that will go all the way from the downtown to Highway 101. As part of this project, there will be a new separated path for walkers and bikers between East Strawberry Drive and Greenwood Beach Road on the south side of 131. There's no bike or pedestrian facility there now. Kids use it to go to school and people use it for walking. So we will have a protected bike lane with some sort of a barrier to keep people safe. It will be open to two-way traffic, but walking and biking on the south side of the highway. There is paving plan for the frontage road of Redwood Highway. The longest section, let's see, the long section which goes from, let's see, Belvedere to Seminary Drive, that is going to be done in a couple of years after the undergrounding project, the PG&E undergrounding project of the distribution lines along the highway will take place. That's a job that's been in the queue for a long time. When that's completed, then the road adjacent to it will be done. But this summer, there'll be a shorter segment of Redwood Highway resurfaced from Seminary to the car wash. So it's not a very long segment, but it will get done. And then finally, for any of you with family members bringing children to Edna McGuire School, there's going to be some additional paving on Lomita next year, and a completion of the bike route over the hill to Corte Madera on Horse Hill. For any of you following the situation on Richardson Bay, both with the encampment, the anchor outs, the eelgrass restoration project, we will be meeting this Thursday, the RBRA board meeting. And we can put information in the chat about how to access that meeting. We are in discussions with BCDC right now along the lines of the city of Sausalito trying to reach an agreement about managing and restoring the eelgrass and working with the people living out on the water to get them in safer housing, either in the marinas or on land over the next several years. And then finally, on vegetation management work planned, Southern Marin Fire will have a virtual workshop on preparedness on Wednesday, May 26th at 5 p.m. This is in conjunction with Fire Safe Marin and the Wildfire Authority. And it will be, yet another opportunity for homeowners to learn how to harden their homes, make them safe for wildfire, address vegetation on property. And there are going to be chipper weeks established where if you remove vegetation from your property, there will be a service to come pick up the vegetation, chip it, take it away at no expense. Let's see, I have here that the district has created 2 fuel breaks to help provide defensible space for homes adjacent to open space. The locations are Millen Drive in Mill Valley and Creekside Way in Mill Valley, and that fire road clearance and maintenance for Ring Mountain Fire Road is also planned for this summer. So that's my general update on issues, and I'm always happy to hear from you if you have additional questions, things you want to talk about. But I'm going to move us along now I want to introduce first my aide, Sarah Estes Smith, and Ann Oreen Partner, both here with us this evening. Many of you know them. Sarah's going to give us a little primer on using Zoom for those of you who just may need a refresher on how to work the question, raise hand, and all that. Yeah, and then I'll introduce Rachel Reid, our senior planning manager.
Thank you, Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to let you all know, first of all, that we are recording tonight's meeting. Also, we're trying to keep everyone muted to reduce background noise so we can all hear each other. If someone becomes unmuted, don't worry, we might mute you if it gets a little bit loud in the background. Also, when we get to the question and answer period, we'd like to ask folks to raise their Zoom hand to let us know that they have a question or a comment. Depending on how you're joining us on Zoom, the raise hand feature might look a little different. So it might be in the bottom edge of your screen where it says reactions. There might be a raise hand button within that menu. Or if you open the participants menu, there may be a raise hand button there. Another option, if you're calling in on your phone, is to press *9. All of those will let us know that you have a question or comment, and I will keep track of the order and let you know when it's your turn. But that will be after Rachel's presentation. So I'll hand it back to Supervisor Moulton-Peters.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, and with that, I'd like to introduce Rachel Reid. Rachel is a member of our community development staff here at Civic Center. She is our environmental planning manager, and among her duties is responsible for the CEQA processes, the EIR processes. I've been briefed by Rachel a couple of times now on the EIR process. I think she does a very good job of explaining them. So she's here tonight to do that this evening. And I have forgotten, Sarah and Rachel, did we decide we're going to hold questions until after the presentation? Is that how we're going to do it as opposed to during?
Yes, following.
All right. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. But I think you'll find Rachel's remarks informative, and then we'll have plenty of time for question after that. So welcome, Rachel. Looking forward to it.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Moulton-Peters, and I appreciate the invite to join tonight and to talk to all of you, give you a little preview of what's going to be happening next week. As the supervisor mentioned, I coordinate the CEQA compliance, so that's California Environmental Quality Act compliance for various county departments and special districts. So it's managing and processing quite a few documents through the pipeline for the county. I'm going to give a brief preview of the scoping session next week for the North Coast project, EIR specifically, with some highlights. And then start out by kind of covering generally the purpose of CEQA, the content and purpose of an EIR, an environmental impact report, and then more specifically go into the North Coast timeline and what we're looking at kind of in terms of tentative milestones. And as well as, let's see, next week, this will be much more detailed. So my main point, if you take away anything, is encouraging you to attend next week. Sarah and Marin can provide that information on how you can join our scoping session if you don't have it already. And then, as the supervisor noted, I will take some questions at the end, but I request that those are limited to the EIR process and to the scoping session. And I'm not accepting any scoping comments formally for the record tonight. And then, just as the environmental coordinator, I'm not going to get into the details of what the project is and the approvals and the history of the property and all of that. I just kind of want to stay focused on the current task. So if you bear with me, I am going to share my screen. And I also want to give you fair warning that if 3 kids run into this room, I might turn my camera off briefly. So here we go. All right. Okay, so starting off, let's go very, very broad strokes here and take a step back. The California Environmental Quality Act. It is essentially a series of analytical steps intended to promote the fundamental purpose and goals of environmental review. So when we talk about this information, which facts, transparency, disclosure, participation with the public being a key player, mitigation of environmental impacts, and accountability by our decision makers, and in this case, the Board of Supervisors. CEQA requires that public agency decision makers document and consider the environmental implications of their actions. What's important to note is that CEQA documents don't tell decision makers whether or not to approve a project. They are just one source of information that's intended to aid in the project approval consideration. Hold on, having problems here already. Can't get my screen to go.
You know, if for some reason it won't advance, Sarah, are you able to share her presentation and advance it?
Oh, here we go. I found a roundabout way to do it. This is not the best, but Environmental Impact Report, EIR. Thanks for your patience, everyone. An EIR is a detailed factual study of potential impacts of a proposed project on the physical environment. The purpose and scope of an EIR, again, identify potential impacts and mitigation measures, to identify project alternatives and evaluate them. I think this is an important point, that EIRs include several alternatives to the project as proposed. Generically speaking, this could be the no project alternative. So as things are without this project going forward, a reduced scale alternative. So everything kind of pared down, the development pared down. A mitigated alternative, which is the project as proposed with all identified mitigation measures included. And why I say it's an important point is because often we have our board end up approving a project that is an alternative to the one proposed. So it's a great option and opportunity to kind of look at different iterations of what is proposed. In addition, it could be a very relevant scoping comment for interested parties to suggest that we look at certain alternatives. And lastly, I'd say that evaluating cumulative impacts. So we're looking at the proposed project in addition to other projects going on kind of in the same geographic area. And do they have kind of a compounding effect, combined impact? So those are all things included in an EIR. We'll talk about kind of the individual environmental topics on a later slide. At the county, it takes us a minimum, I'd say, of 18 months to complete the EIR process. So that is certainly a very, very long road. I'm going to the next slide here. So we're at the start of that long road with the North Coast project. I like to think of the EIR process in terms of a breakdown of 4 milestones, and these also represent opportunities for public participation. The first 2 here are on your slide, and we're currently at step 1, which is the notice of preparation and scoping. It's usually for a 30-day period. We have had, this is kind of a unique circumstance. You'll see down below, we started our NOP period September 25th of last year, and it's going to be extended to May 25th. And this is going to include the public scoping session happening as well on May 18th. So this marks the initiation of the EIR. And the scoping means we're soliciting comments from interested parties about issues to include in the EIR related to environmental impacts. I should note as well that as part of this first step, and what caused kind of a longer NOP period, is that we released the NOP and then we retained the EIR consultant. Generally, we retain the consultant ahead of time. And just to let you know what happened with that, the EIR consultant is Ascent Environmental. Their contract was approved by the Board of Supervisors on April 27th. Ascent was independently selected, retained, and will be managed by county staff and paid for fully by the applicant. So now the ball is rolling. We have Ascent on board, and they will actually be assisting with the scoping session next week. So the second milestone you'll see on the slide is the draft EIR is released. And this is for a 45 to 60-day review and comment period. And it includes a public hearing at the Planning Commission on the adequacy of that draft EIR. So the dates you have here, they say tentative because they are very tentative, and they're actually not dates, they're more seasons. And we took these out of Ascent's proposal, their proposed scope of work, and they're all subject to change. At this point, they are just our kind of best guess. So we can certainly update you as those dates may fluctuate. I'm going to go to the next slide. So step 3 in these milestones here is the final EIR is released. And the final EIR is essentially the county and our consultants, we review all of the comments that we received, And it's kind of the response to all the comments we received and changes to the text of the EIR. And that is for a 14-day review and comment period, which is rather short compared to the draft. But final EIRs tend to be a little more focused. And this second round of review and comment is kind of unique to Marin. Most places don't actually provide for a second comment period. So for that, we're looking at tentatively in the fall of 2022. And then we have here, fourth and final will be the final EIR certification and project approval consideration at the Board of Supervisors. And again, that's a public hearing. So that's generally done, the EIR certification and project approval at the same hearing, although those could be bifurcated. The important thing with the order of that is that the EIR must be certified before an action can be taken to approve the project. So those are the general milestones that we're going to be looking at the scoping session. I think they're going to delve into a lot more detail on those. Again, all of those steps, all of those 4 steps include opportunity for public comment, and that's both oral and in writing. And we encourage every step of the way to follow the project as it progresses through the EIR process. So I want to kind of focus a little more now on where we currently are. Again, at the initiation of the EIR, the scoping session, the purpose to receive public comments being, times as they are, it's all via Zoom as we are now. And it will be, again, to gather environmental issues to be addressed in the EIR. Here's the agenda that was sent out. Again, all of this information was in the notice and expanded on our website. There'll be a project overview, including kind of graphics and discussion about exactly what the project entails detail-wise. And then the EIR process, similar to what I'm going over now, but in more detail, and then meeting procedures. And then the bulk of the meeting is spent on receiving your comments. So we'll have individual speakers, and certainly we encourage respectful listening, keeping focus again on comments that are germane to CEQA, so those regarding environmental impacts, and just making sure that everybody feels comfortable voicing their concerns, regardless of if maybe the larger group agrees or disagrees with them. So this is, again, May 18th, and moving on here.
I'm sorry, Rachel, what time on the 18th?
It is 6 to 8 p.m.
Thank
And
you.
that's in the notice, and hopefully maybe Sarah Marin could provide the link to either CDA's website with that or the notice itself with all the Zoom information. So I want to spend a little time on this slide because I think it might help make what is otherwise abstract when I say environmental impacts be a little less abstract. And these are all relevant as scoping comments. So on the slide is what we call, these are all the topical impact areas that are in CEQA documents. So that will be in the EIR. All of our EIRs are what we call full scope, mean they include all of these required topics. And I'm just going to go through to kind of give some examples. So maybe something will resonate with you, either a concern that you already have about the project or kind of an awareness you have about the property and maybe things that have been issues in the past there. So when we talk about a project, it's the whole of the action. So we're talking about impacts that have to do with construction as well as long-term. So when you're looking at these in your mind, think, construction and then kind of the long-term use of that property if the project were to go forward. Aesthetics is, visual resources, how it looks, is it, blocking anything significantly visual. There are some of these topics that aren't as relevant to this project as they could be to others. For example, like mineral resources, agriculture, and forestry. They'll probably be given more cursory mention in the North Coast EIR just because it's not not super applicable. Newer topics added to these this list from CEQA from the state is wildfire, tribal cultural resources, and then some changes to how transportation impacts are analyzed. So again, going through here, biological resources, we could talk about, you know, special status plants or animals, or, you know, protected streams, or maybe perhaps wetlands. With air quality, we're talking kind of about emissions, airborne, that exceed thresholds of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District standards. Geology and soils, could be landslides or unstable soils, or issues with runoff. Runoff is also related to like hydrology and water quality on this list. Cultural resources could be related to historic resources or archaeological, and certainly tribal cultural resources to, you know, specific to Native American interests. It could be, you know, middens, shell mound, of that nature, because anything that's very close to water, certainly like along the bay, those properties were heavily used. So as part of CEQA, we'll be consulting with various tribes regarding potential resources on the property. Let's see, land use and planning. How about consistency with the countywide plan, or the Strawberry Community Plan? So consistency with those policies. Noise. A lot of that could be construction related. That's all. Noise is generally a big issue for construction. So population and housing. Are we displacing existing population or housing? Are we substantially inducing population to, you know, an area that can't handle it? Public services, fire, police, schools, are they all adequate to take on what this project has proposed, or what it could potentially have in terms of impacts to those? Utility and service systems. Maybe we're talking about sewer and water availability. Is there enough water, sewer service? Recreation. How about, are we substantially deteriorating any existing recreational opportunities that are currently available? Wildfire. Are we exacerbating wildfire risk? Are we exposing people to significant risk? And then I want to spend just a minute on transportation, because that is one that has changed quite a bit in terms of how we look at transportation impacts for purposes of CEQA. With the passage of SB 743 in 2013, it updated the way that transportation impacts are measured. And later amendments to CEQA, which went fully into effect last July, July of 2020, where traffic and level of service are no longer relevant CEQA impacts for evaluating transportation. So that was a big thing. The current metric that is now mandated by the state is called VMT, or vehicle miles traveled. And I won't even get into the different ways to analyze that. But the point is that the state determined that that's the most appropriate metric to evaluate a project's transportation impact, because it aligns with the state's objectives on greenhouse gas reduction and on the goals of increasing infill development. And really, traffic delay, it is a social impact. It is not an environmental impact. So while you'll still see traffic and traffic standards, LOS standards in our countywide plan, and they have to be looked at for consistency with the countywide plan, we can no longer consider them CEQA impacts for transportation. So I wanted to note that, because I have already, looking through the NOP comments, I know that that is an issue raised frequently, and a concern raised frequently with this particular property and proposal. So really, when we're talking about transportation on this list here, this bullet point list, we're talking about vehicle miles traveled, and that's kind of more of an academic exercise that our traffic sub consultant is going to figure out. But really, it's about like traffic safety. And you could also talk about kind of multimodal, or talk about design of roads, the curves kind of being unsafe sight lines, and emergency access. Is there adequate emergency access? So those are kind of the more transportation related comments now that we would consider in the EIR. So not to belabor that point, but I thought it may be helpful to kind of inform your scoping comments. So here, again, we have, other than the scoping session, which again, we provide your comments to us orally, you can also submit them in writing. And you can do this via hard copy to the address I have here on the screen and was included in the notice, or you could do it to our email, our environmental planning email. And again, that deadline for all comments, for the written comments, Tuesday, May 25th by 4 p.m. And I should say that if you've already submitted comments, you can add to those if you wish. If you're like, oh, that's right, I wanted to, expand on that thought, or you thought of a new concern, like, please send that in. It will supplement kind of your previous scoping comments. And I should say all comments will be treated the same for the record. So those we receive, orally at the scoping session, those we get in writing via email or hard copy, those we received last fall versus, the day before the comment period closes, they'll all be treated the same. They will all be included in the record. They will be in an appendix in the draft EIR. So you'll see them in there when the draft EIR comes out, and there will be cross-reference to where that comment is addressed in the draft EIR. So you'll see that link about how we addressed your concern. And let's see, sorry. So here are kind of my recommended action items for you. And the first would be, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to our project EIR webpage. And I should say there's also a project page that is in current planning. They're linked. So if you're subscribed to that, you're subscribed to our EIR webpage. And the reason for that is because you will receive notifications anytime we release anything new, or any notice or any meeting coming up. We'll be able to, push it out to you, and it could get on your calendar. And as well, I just encourage you to check out our website. It does have, the project documents and, the project description, and a link to the project page at current planning. So that has all the submittal materials from the applicant. So all the application materials, if you want to do a deep dive into the weeds of what has been submitted. And as well, Michelle Levinson is a senior planner with community development, and she's actually the project planner. So I'm more the role of just kind of handling the environmental coordination, the EIR, but she's handling the project merits, all other kind of project related approvals. And then to attend the scoping session, that's my second one. Again, really digging in on that. And here is the date and the time. And I wanted to add one thing that I forgot in the list of the bullet points of the topics. And that is some issues that aren't included. I think I just went on about the transportation. It just slipped my mind. But social and economic impacts are not included in CEQA documents unless they somehow lead to a direct or indirect impact on the physical environment. So what are we talking about? We're talking about impacts on property values in terms of like economic. That's not something we consider, or other kind of social, socioeconomic concerns. Those generally aren't included, and it's not because they're not important. They definitely are. It's just that that's not a CEQA concern. It's not an environmental impact. And so that would be handled more through what we call kind of the merits or the project approval, more in Michelle's wheelhouse, and certainly something that, you know, the board takes into larger consideration, again, with the environmental review just being one kind of cog in the wheel. So I would say with that, that's it. That's my piece and my selling point to try to get you to come to our scoping session. I would be happy to take a few questions, but again, I just want to make sure to limit them to more or less the content of what I just provided, kind of EIR process and what the scoping session is about. So thank you, and I am going to stop sharing right now. There we go.
Great. Okay, so we are going to open to questions, and Sarah will facilitate that. I wanted to ask a couple of questions, Rachel, just right off the bat. One, there was a question we had about the scoping session is 2 hours, and so if there are a large number of questions, how will you capture all the questions in 2 hours? You know,
I think we'll try to accommodate. I think we'll try to gauge how many people we have who are interested in providing comments orally. There may be some people who elect, like, I'll just submit a written comment, but I think everybody will be allowed to speak. So if we go over, we go over, and that's fine. We just kind of wanted to provide some kind of time, some range of what we would generally expect, kind of based on past lengths of scoping sessions.
okay. All right. Well, that's good to hear. And also the written comments can be taken. So then on your last point, if things not covered in the EIR, like economic and social issues and traffic effectively. So where do people weigh in about those issues? If it's not in your process, where do those comments go?
I mean, I think, and again, to me, they are incredibly important, especially kind of more the social element, but that you can still submit letters just regarding the project in general to the project planner, to Michelle Levinson. I think her email, I don't know, Sarah or Marin, if you were able to provide that, because they are things I'm sure that the board weighs in their consideration. And again, if we receive comments, and we often do on impacts that aren't included in CEQA, we'll acknowledge them, we'll address them to the extent we can, but just know that it's not something that we're going to go into great depth on.
Okay. Well, and people can always send them to my office, to me as
Correct.
well, directly.
Right.
And I can make sure they're part of the record in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. I see Rona has her hand up. So Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, so for the Q&A time, if you have a question you'd like to ask, please use the raise hand feature. I'll be keeping track of the order and we'll let you know. Also, Maureen is putting links to the various resources in the chat. So if there's something that you want in there that you don't see, let us know and we can send you a link. All right, Rona.
So I just want to be clear about the process. I live right across from the seminary, and I'm on the board of my condo HOA. And we have an issue. We have an issue that needs to be addressed under hydrology. So, I mean, this is something actual, substantial, that needs to be part of the EIR. So I submitted a paper explaining the situation, and it could be included, right?
It would definitely be included. We were very interested in hearing from you. So yes, whether you join our Zoom scoping session and say it orally, or you just submit a paper to my mailing address, it'll be included.
Yeah, I don't know how much. Well, I guess I'll just submit a bunch of things and what you don't, I mean, we have an estimate for how much it would cost to repair our storm drains, which receive all the water that we receive is from the seminary. And they've just denied responsibility for our storm drains that are falling apart and compromising our foundations. So that we should definitely be under hydrology.
Yes, thank you, Rona. You provided my gold star example of choosing something off that list. And yeah, no, thank you. That's a perfect example of a scoping comment, and we look forward to receiving it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We don't have anyone else in the queue at the moment, so if you happen to have a question, now's a great time to raise your hand. We also are happy to take questions for Supervisor Moulton-Peters, not about the seminary, if you happen to have a question about something else. Okay, South End Rowing Club.
Sorry, I don't know how to change my, usually I can change my name. But for some reason it's locked up here and I'm not allowed to do that. So this is Josh Sale. And I actually have a couple questions if you'll let me. I mean, the first is, can you say a word about Ascent and why you chose them, and you know what drove that decision? Well, I'll ask the questions one at a time.
Sure, yeah. So Ascent, what we ended up doing, which is pursuant to our county EIR guidelines, is we sent out the RFP, for the request for proposal, to I think it was 4 to 5 consulting firms at the time. We looked for ones that we had had previous experience with, that had very well-rounded teams, were extremely good breadth in terms of this type of project, and in working, we wanted somebody who had worked in Marin, preferably. Ascent as well, they were going to give a number of principals, of their top principals, who are just CEQA experts. They're the CEQA gurus. They teach CEQA to the teachers. So we know that we're in really good hands. We want to do, have an EIR that's incredibly well done, defensible, obviously legally adequate. And they came through with a very solid understanding of kind of the challenges ahead, and of the project itself, and the issues, and the all the costs from all the proposals were around the same price point. So it wasn't just a heavily a cost consideration. And we just felt like they put forward kind of the most robust, well thought out, detailed proposal.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay to ask a second question?
Yeah, of course.
So you just talked about kind of a robust, defensible product at the end. And I think others continue to scratch our heads about how you can achieve that end without looking at the college and the impacts associated with it. And yeah, it's just kind of head scratching for us.
I hear you, Josh, and these are echo the concerns that were raised at the board hearing back in November, and I have nothing new to say on those points other than any reasonably foreseeable use of the college will need to be included. It will have to be included in the evaluation. So we're going to have to take a really hard look when we draft the project description chapter. And as a first step, once we get past scoping, with our EIR consultant team and staff, is we're going to have to coordinate with the applicant to get the necessary information to draft a project description chapter that is accurate and complete and finite, and it won't change throughout the course of the EIR. And it's going to have to address the foreseeable use of the school and assumptions. If certain information isn't provided, then then I think, as I mentioned at the board hearing, that, you know, we may have to make assumptions. And generally when that happens, it's usually more worst case. Just because the purpose of the EIR, you have to evaluate what could be the greatest level of impact. So absent
We won't see that.
details, we'd have to make assumptions around that, but I don't want to speculate, and I don't really want to revisit this the college issue too much right now, just because there's nowhere new to go with that at this point. But I just want to say I'm validating your concern, and I hear what you're saying.
But just to clarify one thing that you just said now, so in terms of this revised project description chapter you referenced, we would see that for the first time when the draft EIR comes out?
Correct. Yeah. Right. And that's your chance. You could comment on the adequacy of that. That's like, you could say, you got it all wrong. Like, you didn't include it. And because of that, your impact analysis is faulty. You're underestimating the impacts. So yes, that would be where you would tell us that.
Okay, next we have Frank.
Yes, Supervisor Moulton-Peters. Shortly, you're going to be a part of approving a roughly $250 million budget for the county in the coming year. Last year, about 25% was HHS, Health and Human Services. Another quarter was the public safety, primarily the sheriff's office. And I wonder if you could tell us something about the expected timing of getting further information on those budget proposals and key concerns that you have in passing a new budget.
Oh, that's a good question, Frank. So let me just say, I wish I had the specific dates to give you, but I'll follow up with you and the group here tonight. I expect the budget information to come out in early June and the hearings to take place the week of the 20th or thereabouts. And for there to be 2 to 3 days of hearings, as there typically are. And I will be, looking at, the Sheriff's Department budget, as well as the HH&S budget, as well as some other budget items, which I'm blanking on at the second, because I'm frankly so focused right now on this project and what's going out in the Sausalito waters, and the public housing at Golden Gate Village are really like what's central for me at the moment. But you and I have talked about meeting for a number of months. I'm happy to set that up in advance and we can talk about all this in detail. But that's what I have at the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Randy? Randy, you're muted.
Hi. I'm wondering about all these new rules, some of which may have passed and others still in process, that allow housing by right, the ADUs, the multi-family units where usually one residential unit was specified, how that impacts the calculation of density. Usually when you have a planned development, you know what you're going to get. And it seems to me there's a range of what we might get in not just this project, but in all the planned development projects we're going to have coming up. And I'm wondering how that's going to be handled in an EIR in terms of discussing the impacts. Will that be acknowledged at all, or will we address the project that's submitted and pretend that these other potential impacts won't happen? How is that going to be dealt with?
No, very, very good point, Randy, and good to see you again. It's been a while, Commissioner. It will be dealt with. I mean, it has to be. You have to look at, and I think there is a range. I can't speak to all the housing laws, and they are changing so fast, and all of the, density bonuses and what that does. But that's going to be incorporated into the EIR, and it will be made clear, and it probably will be a range that's looked at. And so it'll have to analyze the outermost
Okay,
number. And so, yeah, again, the most impactful.
right. And an associated question, but not so directly related to this EIR, maybe Stephanie knows or somebody else knows. In terms of our RENA numbers, can we count the potential allowed by these new laws to go toward our RENA numbers, which could be a lot of units? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're asking. I'm just not the person with the answer. But yes, yeah. Do you have an idea, Stephanie?
Well, actually, I'd love for one of you to restate the question because I wasn't sure I understood it. Are you asking if the numbers agreed to in the CEIR process, or I'm sorry, the numbers approved by the Board of Supervisors would count towards the RENA numbers?
It's aside from this project. It would apply to everything. You have to meet, every jurisdiction has to meet these new numbers that we have been imposed on us. And I'm wondering if you can count the potential units that will be allowed by these new laws that allow building by right, where before that wasn't true, where you had to go through CEQA and you had to, you know, if it was a planned development, you had to get an amendment to the development plan. And now you don't have to do that. So that expands the number of units that could appear. If that were calculated for, say, the whole unincorporated area, could that satisfy the RENA? I mean, if the numbers rose to that amount, could that satisfy the RENA requirement for this next period of time?
That's a good question. I wish Tom Lai was here, quite frankly, because I think he would have the answer. I do not, Randy, but we can take it and get back to you with it.
Because I've read a lot about it, and I haven't read anything about that. And this is also new that I'm not sure there is an answer yet, but it occurred to me that it's an interesting approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah, ask like a true former planning commissioner. Okay, thank you. We'll see if we can get an answer for you. Other questions? Yeah, sorry.
At the moment, we don't have anyone with a raised hand. If you have a question, there we go, Richard.
Sorry about that. So Rachel, I think this is a question for you, but I'm not sure. In the past, we have used traffic and level of service as criteria in evaluating the impact of projects. Vehicle miles traveled is a nifty way if you want to come up with a new way to calculate gas taxes. But it doesn't really tell you much about the impact of traffic on communities. So my question is, an idling car probably generates more greenhouse gases than a car that is traveling. Can we use greenhouse gases and noise as a proxy for the old level of service analysis that we used to do?
Trying to be clever here, Richard. Let's see. I don't think so. I like you're being creative, but no.
Well, what I'm really saying is if there are 1,000 students and they're all commuting into the seminary, that is going to have a greenhouse gas impact, unquestionably.
That's true. When you talk about, maybe I'll give you an example. So the vehicle miles traveled, yes, if it's a commuter school, it would have huge ramifications for greenhouse gas. So then you look at, well, what are potential mitigations for VMT related impacts? And that's where you get things like transit, carpooling. I mean, the idea is you're going to find ways to cut down on the miles traveled. So there are a lot of kind of like regional based mitigation measures to VMT impacts. But ones again, like encouraging, enabling transit and carpools and other methods like that would be the way to mitigate a VMT impact to a level of less than significant.
But if you're talking about mitigation, then it seems to me you've accepted the fact that a lot of cars produce a lot of
Oh yeah,
greenhouse gas.
it would be an impact. It would be an impact for sure.
Okay. Okay.
And then
Thank
they
you.
just have to find ways to mitigate. And then there's the question of, proportionality, like how much do you need to mitigate to say that it's going to be less than significant? So it's a new world. Like you said, we had done things the old way for so long. And I know when this change came around, like all traffic engineers were like, what, my world is blowing up. And even all those us in, local government, like LOS, that's been the way we've done things. So it's a huge shift for sure.
Thank you.
Well, we are almost out of time, but does anyone have one final question they'd like to ask? Oh, I see Bruce waving. Let me unmute you.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Now I can't hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. I can't figure out how to find the little hand. When I got my cursor on the screen here, I can see it, but it doesn't seem to be working for me. I just wanted to ask again. This has to do with transportation and traffic. But as you know, Seminary is bounded by Highway 101 and State Route 131. And it would seem to me that Caltrans would have something to say about this project if traffic became so congested at that interchange of 101 Tiburon Boulevard, East Blythedale, that it might be a good idea to check with the state, with Caltrans, to figure out what the capacity of the road system is. Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, before we go into an EIR process that's going to take years and years, and we go through all the ramifications and different plans, wouldn't it be kind of would it make sense to start there with Caltrans?
Yeah, Caltrans, sorry to interrupt you, Bruce, but we did include them on our notice list. And so they are an agency that is going to submit comment.
Okay.
So we hope to, receive comment and address it and, consult with them if we need to troubleshoot.
Okay.
But that's, you're right on. It's very relevant.
All right. And then I just have again, going back to procedure, and this is something that I guess is worked out at the meeting, but many times groups have 5 minutes to present their case, whereas individuals might have 3 minutes. But given that the meeting is only 2 hours long, would you have any idea of what kind of a presentation should be presented? Is it 1 minute? Is it 2 minutes? Is there any way to know? Because a lot of people spend a lot of time preparing a 3-minute speech, and then they're told at the meeting, oh, you can only have 1 minute. So is there some way to know in advance?
No, thank you. I understand where you're coming from, and we usually do 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're going to allow everybody to speak. If there are groups, we could potentially allow longer than that. And then they could also follow up with written comment. But I don't, that will be discussed kind of at the start of the scoping session. But I hear where you're coming from, because you want to know how to prepare or how long your comments should be. So let me talk with my team, and we can kind of have some parameters around that, so you have a little more certainty going in.
That'd be helpful. Thank you. That's all I had.
Great. Well, look, I'm going to do a quick wrap up and thank you all for coming. Clearly, this is a group that's been following this project for a long time for the most part. I know that there are longstanding concerns about this development. The issue of traffic is one that certainly is in my mind. And so, you know, whether we're able with vehicle miles traveled to capture it officially in the EIR process, I can tell you that I will be paying attention to this as a supervisor. And I can also tell you that the city of Mill Valley will weigh in on this from a traffic standpoint, as they did in earlier iterations of this project. So there are concerns throughout the area of the impact on traffic. So that's real, regardless of how it gets calculated or counted or what. I want you to know that I plan to join you at all the meetings and sit in the audience and listen the way I did a couple years ago when the Seminary Tomorrow project had its last meeting and when North Coast had its open house. So you'll see me at these meetings. I always want to hear what the conversation is and get a sense of you know, where the issues are. I promise you there will be a transparent and fair process. You know, I don't know where we're going to be when we get out the other end, but there is a lot of attention being focused on this project right now throughout the county. I think it's, you know, one of the largest things we have going, and everyone realizes it's important and needs to be handled well. I invite you to be in touch with me anytime by email to me directly or to Sarah and Maureen with questions and concerns. And I encourage you to go next week to the scoping session on May 18th. I'll look for you there. And let's get started with this process. I know we've been through a number of processes before. I think this is one of the ones that will carry us forward. And then in 2022 or 23, it will come to the Board of Supervisors. And I'll be prepared to advocate for the neighborhood and for the developer to, you know, find the right balance in what's being proposed here. So I want to thank Rachel and Sarah and Maureen and all of you for joining us. Wish you a good evening, and please let's keep in touch. See you next week. Okay.